Igawil's treasure rests within, her curse on any who disturbs it. Seek no further to steal it, or to free the one prisoned here. Inscribed warning. Welcome, humble adventurers, to my realm of knowledge and mystery. Here, in my cursed library, are endless tomes and scrolls on the darkest and evilest foes in all the realms, be they from Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, the many worlds of darkness, or any realm in between. Welcome to the Dastardly decimal system. I'm your caretaker of the corrupt, the librarian, Castor Cain. It's hard enough to make a name for yourself in a multiverse of horrendous villains who commit unspeakable evil. It's almost impossible to be a new, infamous name in a vast sea of wickedness, and that's just among the mortals. Add in the collection of fiends, celestials, and deities, and the villainous sea grows even greater and infinitely darker. What makes it even harder is when you are a child of an infamous evil. So, and at the risk of mixing metaphors, you find yourself swimming in a vast sea while standing beneath your parent's shadow. For today's topic, I have brewed a pot of Samurai Spirit Mate tea. This blend is rich in energy and stimulation. It's meant to invigorate your mind and body. So take a seat as we discuss the samurai vampire known as Drelnza, daughter of Tasha. The warrior maiden known as Drelnza is a beacon of beauty and strength. She was the princess of Perrinland and one of its deadliest warriors. Her skin was alabaster and her face was pale but composed, somehow becoming the focal point for her great beauty. Her lips were bright scarlet red, often glistening with hints of blood. Her raven-hued locks were vibrant and lustrous, falling to the middle of her back. She is often seen in either a regal dress or her battle armor, both of which are made from the highest quality materials worn only by a princess. While in battle, she is armored in gold chased full plate and a black helm. Her armor has a jade hue with golden edges and azure highlights. It is decorated with a Far Eastern motif. Rising suns decorate her knees and golden onis are etched onto her epaulets. Her boots have been enchanted with magic that grants her speed and haste. Drelnza was a trained samurai who preferred blades in combat. Unlike most in her army, she did not use long swords and short swords. Instead, she preferred a curved pair of blades made from folded steel. She wielded a katana in one hand and a wakizashi in the other. Drelnza was a master of dual wielding. Both blades seemed to move independent of each other, slicing different foes only to come back together to block or parry an incoming strike. Despite her unnatural strength and speed, she was still a cunning fighter, choosing to trip or disarm a foe or even sunder their weapons. Those foes that felt her blade witnessed the pure power behind each cut. Her samurai mastery had even granted her the ability to summon forth her inner energy and smite a foe with what she called a Kai smite. Alongside her martial prowess, Drelnza was also blessed with arcane and vampiric abilities. Her undead form granted her the ability to fly, run along the wall like a spider, control rats and spiders, and even feast upon her foes in order to both sustain and heal herself. Vampires had the ability to charm a foe with a simple gaze. Drelnza had a superior version of that, having the ability to intimidate or demoralize dozens of enemies with a single glance, easily turning the tide of a battle before she had even struck a single blow. Yet if the battle did turn, or she was beaten, Drelnza could take a gaseous form and escape. A warrior of Drelnza's quality did not wield mundane weapons. Her blades were masterfully created and enchanted with the most powerful of magics. Her wakizashis would ignite in flames during combat, a burning beacon of the death that was about to befall you. The katana, however, was a weapon on a whole different level. It was called Igilwiv's Wrath. Yet as times have changed, so too has Drelnza's arsenal. She eventually ditched her 2 blades for a powerful greatsword called Heretic. The sword was a magical artifact bestowed with intelligence. It was crafted by Tasha herself, and was used as the ultimate weapon against the gods and their meddlesome servants. It was a sentient weapon that spoke through telepathy. It gifted Drelnza with new magical spells to add to her arsenal, while also gifting her with a new purpose. The blade was snobby and condescending, especially to clerics. The blade loathed any divine caster, but had a special hatred for those who followed the good gods. The blade thought them hypocrites and loved casting confusion upon them in the middle of combat, separating them from their allies and leaving them more vulnerable to attacks. Since teaming up with Drelnza, the blade had plenty of opportunity to feed its venomous hate. As is the case with most children of famous parents, you cannot tell the story of one without getting into the story of the other. With Drelnza, that means we talk about Tasha. Now, I won't be spending too much time getting into the Witch Queen. This discussion is not about her. We could spend an entire pot of tea, or 2, talking about her, and I expect to do so in the future. That being said, some context is needed. Tasha is a woman of many names. She started out as a wizard named Natasha. She was adopted by Baba Yaga, yes, that Baba Yaga, and grew into Natasha the Dark. She took the name Tasha when she joined the Company of 7, a collection of wandering heroes. It was there she developed the famous spell known as Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Eventually she discovered the secrets of the Abyss and took on the infamous name of Igilwiv. With her new moniker in place, she built a palace in the Abyss and began to pen her collection of demonic knowledge. She authored the feared tome, the Demonomicon. She traveled to the Yatil Mountains, discovered the resting place of the ancient mage Tasha, and used his power to eventually summon and imprison the demon lord Gratzt, one of her many lovers. With the combined powers of both trapped souls, Igilwiv created a large army of demons and undead and invaded the surrounding lands of Perrinland. In under a year, she had conquered the kingdom and installed herself as Igilwiv, the Witch Queen. Some point during this time, Tasha gave birth to her daughter, Drelnza. While the father's identity has been lost to time, it was known to definitely not be Gratz, unless it was. Rule 1, Tasha lies. Now some records have put Drelnza's birth in the decade that Igilwiv ruled, but many other records have Drelnza fighting alongside her mother on the battlefield in her campaign to conquer the land. By any definition of the word, however, Drelnza was a princess. Even before the Witch Queen held power in Perrinland, she had a palace in the Abyss. Drelnza was also the granddaughter of the Baba Yaga, and if that doesn't make you some sort of dark, evil royalty, then I don't think anything does. Drelnza, however, was not raised to be a princess. Instead, she was raised to be a warrior. Tasha scoured the lands to find the greatest fencers in order to teach her daughter. Now, knowing Tasha's power and resources, I doubt she would simply pick a teacher without first testing them. I try to imagine what sort of test Tasha would lay out to her daughter's teachers in order for them to showcase their skills. But even with all of my studying on evil and villains, I doubt my mind has the darkness and cruelty to imagine what Tasha would do. For years, Drelnza trained, perfecting her skills and honing her murderous ability. Tasha would continuously test her daughter, recruiting the most skilled warriors in order to spar with her, and knowing the resources of the Demononicon's author, it's very unlikely that she would limit these sparring partners to simply mortals. I can easily envision Tasha summoning a Merilith and then forcing her daughter to battle the 6-armed snake woman demon. There are no demons more feared as fencers than the Merilith, and Tasha only wanted the best for her daughter. Eventually, Drelnza was turned into a vampire. There are no records as to how or why she underwent the change. Was it her choice, or was it forced upon her? Was she injured in battle and vampirism was the only way to save her? Or did the fencer reach the peak of what a mortal could do and wish not to be limited by it? Regardless of the reason, as a vampire, her skills grew even greater. What few unaltered records that remain from the Witch Queen's reign speak of how crucial Drelnza was in the conquering of Paranland. The unstoppable fencer would have led the battle marching on the front line. Now picture this. The humans, dwarves, and elves would stand in defense, staring out into the moonless night. They knew the undead horde was marching upon them, but they could not see them approach. There were no torches to give away their positions. The undead did not require light in order to see. Instead, it was simply a dark night with an eerie silence, and the occasional groan echoing across the air. Suddenly, a small flame ignites. It's bigger than a torch, but smaller than a longsword. As the soldiers try to decipher what it is, the burning wisps dash forward at incredible speed. It leaps high into the air, and as its arc of movement begins to descend, the burning wisp raises just slightly, only to reveal, and far too late, the fanged face of an armored woman descending upon them. Drelnza's attacks are swift and deadly, her katana and flaming wakazashis dutifully carving through any soldier that dares to stand against her. The katana would slash with powerful attacks, crippling or felling foes. As the flaming ghost would sear away the living flesh, she would cleave through one foe, only to swiftly cut down the one beside him. Every part of Drelnza was a weapon, as the spinning dervish slashed at every opportunity, slicing or disarming. Her legs and limbs would strike as well, tripping a foe or stunning them. She would take to the airs or run alongside walls, attacking from impossible angles, and when a cleric of Palor was called upon their god's magic and attempt to turn or banish her, Drelnza would cackle as she ran her blade through the cleric's chest. Drelnza and her vampiric spawn were the vanguard as the undead army charged behind them. Inglewiv's legion of zombies, skeletons, demons, and unnameable undead horrors descended upon the city with murder and massacre. For 10 years, Inglewiv ruled Paranland with an iron fist and a sharp spell. But eventually, her empire came to an end. The evil machinations of Gratz allowed him to manipulate the witch, severely weakening her and then granting his own escape from her imprisonment. With her power weakened, the Flan people rebelled and earned their freedom. Iggulwiv was badly injured and forced to flee, leaving her treasure and arcane artifacts behind. As the decades passed, whispers of the witch's great wealth began to spread, but the one that spread the most was the rumor that Iggulwiv's greatest treasure was buried within those caverns. Many greedy adventurers made their way in, but few ever left. Some were slain by the golems and dracolisks that hid within. Others succumbed to the arcane taint that affected the cavern, corrupting their mind, driving them to insanity. Those that made it in and survived all the way to the inner sanctum found a circular room with a magical lamp hanging over a broad stone slab, with Drelnza sleeping upon it. She slept in her armor, her blade laying across her body, as its hilt was below her breast. The woman's gauntleted hands were crossed over the sword's pommel. As the heroes approached, she would slowly sit up and fearfully grasp the sword in one mauled fist. She would rub her eyes with the other, and with an innocent coo she would ask, "Who has rescued me from this dreadful sleep?" Drelnza would act innocent and docile, telling stories of being a warrior, trapped in this, begging for a savior. All the while she waited for the heroes to get close. Then she would lunge. Iggulwiv did not leave her artifacts unguarded. Drelnza was not only the protector of the caverns, but also Iggulwiv's greatest treasure. Drelnza was a vicious warrior. She would run along the circular wall, striking down from above as she tore the treasure hunters apart and fed on their last breaths of life. If a cleric stepped in, they were targeted first. She would charm them and force them away from the party before feeding on them and ripping them apart, sating not only her own hunger, but that of her blades as well. If she got severely injured, she would turn to mist and escape beneath the stone slab. There, she would regenerate in her coffin as she readied herself to attack once more. Nobody escaped the blades of Drelnza for long. Be you a villain or a hero, the road is always more difficult as the child of a famous parent. No matter what you do, you will always be compared to them. Did you surpass your parents, or did you fail to even come close? Despite Drelnza's martial skill, she would forever fail in comparison to her legendary mother. It didn't, however, lessen her mother's love for her. The caverns of Jisojacanth were filled with paintings that Tasha had commissioned of her daughter, the most famous of which depicted her sailing under the glow of the full moon. History says that Drelnza was eventually slain, staked in her coffin when her body reformed. While I don't doubt that the vampire was slain, I have reservations as to if she will remain that way. Let's look at the facts. Drelnza is the daughter of Tasha, a well-known necromancer. Fact. She is the granddaughter of Baba Yaga, the Dark Witch. Fact. She is the half-sister of the evil necromancer god known as Ayuz. Fact. And to make matters worse, her mother's sometimes lover and sometimes enemy, the demon lord known as Gratz, has proven there is no limit he won't go to in order to mess with Tasha. Fact. I suspect that if Drelnza still remains slain, she won't be for much longer. It seems that our tea has run out. I hope this aids in your vampiric slaying. Join me again in my library for more stories and lore about the darkest villains from the darkest realms. This has been the Dastardly Decimal System, and once again, I am your librarian, Castor Cain. Do you love the Dastardly Decimal System and want to support us? Check out our new Patreon. Members will get access to show notes, official artwork, our new bonus episode series called Cleaning Up After Tea Time, and of course, plenty of cat pics of Vega voice actors Vash and Zid. You'll even be able to suggest a topic for a future episode. Check it out at patreon.com/Dastardly Decimal System. If you are not financially able and still want to support us, suggest the show to a D&D loving friend, and it really helps us get noticed. The Dastardly Decimal System can be found on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at DD System Podcast. That's Delta Delta System Podcast. Drop us a message and say hi. Vega always loves the attention. This podcast was produced by Midnight Reading Audio, a division of Midnight Reading Publishing. The voice of Castor Cain is Larry Gent. Hi. The voice of Vega is provided by my cats, Vash and Zid. Music was Set the Controls by Alfred Groupsta from Pixabay.com, licensed under the Creative Commons. Thank you, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.